Hello and welcome back to my GOS challenge week. Today features the third and final day of my GOS challenge. So far I've been symptom free, but today's final challenge portion is a large one. Stay tuned to see how I incorporate it into a fresh and tasty low FODMAP meal. By the end of this video you'll have 5 full days and 15 meals worth of low FODMAP recipes to help you through your own GOS challenge. Make sure to check out the full playlist so you don't miss a thing. Today's breakfast is the carrot cake oats that you saw me prepare in Thursday's video from this series. I couldn't believe how much these reminded me of the luscious carrot cake I used to eat before I turned vegan. If you're in a rush, you can eat these cold straight from the jar as overnight oats. Just give everything a good stir and away you go. Depending on how thick you like your oats, or if you plan on eating them warm, you may need to add an extra 1/4 cup of milk. If you prefer your oats warm, then thanks to soaking them overnight, they only need about 5 minutes on medium heat. I personally think heating the oats turns them into a creamy, decadent tasting breakfast that you'll never think was so healthy and sugar-free. Oats are such a great low FODMAP breakfast. It's really important to experiment with them and find your tolerance level so you can include them in your diet. Personally, I can only tolerate about 1/2 cup of cooked oats, so I try to include them in this quantity every day. It's really important not to dismiss them altogether just because you might not tolerate a full portion. Experiment with different quantities, different types such as rolled, quick or gluten-free. Try soaking them overnight and even eating them in a variety of ways such as hot, cold, baked or blended. Today's final GOS challenge portion was 6 tablespoons of peas. I have to admit this is quite a big portion for me, and it's unlikely I'd usually eat this amount at one sitting, but for my own peace of mind I ate it all. If you're certain you'll never eat the full challenge portion, then for your final challenge just eat the amount you'd be likely to have at any one time. The whole idea of the FODMAP challenges is to allow you to incorporate as many high FODMAP foods in the largest amount acceptable to you. If you have a small appetite or only enjoy small amounts of certain foods, then there's no need to unnecessarily trigger your symptoms just to fulfill the challenges. The best thing to do when selecting your challenge food is test your favourite first, as that's the one you're most likely to eat more of and potentially be triggered by in the future. I purposely made enough kale pesto earlier in the week to use in today's challenge meal. This is where the beauty of meal planning, especially on a challenge week, really pays off. Knowing exactly what you'll be eating for each day of the challenge removes a lot of the potential stress and anxiety that it's easy to experience during this phase of the diet. Once again, the peas blended perfectly with the flavours of the pesto to create this fresh and zingy pate. As we've established this week, I am the queen of cook once, eat twice, so of course I had leftovers to make this a complete delicious meal in minutes. I made fresh crunchy lettuce cups with the remainder of the ceviche. To go with the pate, I added rice cakes and some of the leftover nachos. I really hope this recipe and this series as a whole has shown you that not only do your challenge meals not need to be complicated, but they can also be creative and enjoyable. The most important points to follow are to use the same food for each day of the challenge, to keep all of the meals that week as low FODMAP as possible, and to challenge at roughly the same time each day to minimise the risks of accidentally stacking your FODMAPs. For tea, I used tinned mushrooms prepared in the same way as the Tuesday episode in this series. I asked my FODMAP friends on Instagram if they'd tried them and was surprised at how many people didn't realise they're low FODMAP. I'll be the first to admit that tinned mushrooms have never featured highly on my must-eat list, but when rinsed, drained and dried overnight, they can be a great addition for anybody really missing fresh mushrooms. To add extra flavour to this mushroom stroganoff, I used the seasoned oil from some sun-dried tomatoes. I used 1/2 cup of tinned mushrooms, a handful of spring onion greens and the equivalent of 1/2 grilled red pepper. Be aware that the mushrooms are prone to spit, so keep the heat on low and add in the soy sauce quickly to reduce the chance of getting burned, and tame down the mushrooms before they all leap out of the pan. This is a fairly quick throw together meal, so these veggies should only need about 5 minutes. I use microwave rice to speed things up even more. It's also a great recipe to use up leftover rice, but if you prefer, cook yours from fresh. Stir everything together until the rice is piping hot. Whilst the rice cooks, add 200 grams of firm pressed tofu to a blender. To the tofu, add 3 sun-dried tomatoes. This recipe serves 2, so you'll be within low FODMAP limits. Even if you only need 1 portion, this tofu cream sauce keeps well in the fridge and is so delicious you'll wish you had leftovers. Add 1/4 teaspoon of smoked paprika, 1/2 teaspoon of asafoetida, 1 teaspoon of dried dill, 1 teaspoon of apple cider vinegar, 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast, 1/4 teaspoon of black salt, and 1 tablespoon of Dijon mustard. The mix is quite dry until it gets going in the blender, so I added 1/4 cup of almond milk to help it along. Add it in really small amounts to stop the sauce from being too runny. Add the tofu cream to the fried rice. Heat for about 3 minutes on medium heat just to warm the sauce through. Once everything is done, add all the fresh parsley. I top mine with the Violife Parmesan style cheese. It does contain flavourings, but you only need a tiny amount to get a big bold flavour. If you're not familiar with it, I'll add a photograph of it in here so you can recognise the packaging the next time you see it. And finally, for breakfast on Saturday, I blended up the leftover carrot cake oats with a cup of almond milk to create this delicious smoothie. I'd love to hear how you like this video and the GOS challenge series as a whole. I hope to bring you more challenges, so let me know in the comments what you'd like to see next. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll speak to you soon.